Bonjour tout le monde! French pharmacies are some of my favorite places in France. They're awe-inspiring and they have enough colorful little packages to keep your eyes busy at least until it's your turn to speak to the pharmacist. And they're places you'll visit often, not only for prescription meds, but for over-the-counter products, skincare, and even makeup, and sometimes advice as well. So are French pharmacies different? Let's get right into my list of differences between pharmacies in France and the United States. Alright, so my first difference is that French pharmacies are really just about the medicine and personal care products. No fluff. And this stands in sharp contrast to what we know in the US. We commonly say we're running to the pharmacy to get a few things and we come home with toilet paper, Gatorade, maybe some gum, a magazine. But you wouldn't find any of these things in a French pharmacy, which on the whole tend to be smaller than US chain drugstores, and they carry just medicines and personal care products. So you're not going to find the greeting card section or the kids' toy section or an aisle of snacks or anything like that. Just the medicine. There are also pharmacies that include a parapharmacy section, parapharmacy, or places that are just parapharmacies and don't even have prescription medications. So that'll include stuff like skincare products, makeup, sunscreen, other non-prescription items, but never gum and drinks or magazines and that sort of thing. You just won't find it at a French pharmacy. Something else I'll point out, you won't see ads at the pharmacy or on TV or in magazines for prescription drugs like you would in the US. Direct-to-consumer pharmaceutical advertising for prescription drugs is illegal in France and pretty much everywhere aside from the US and New Zealand. Alright, number two, no long wait times at pharmacies in France to fill your prescription. And in fact, there's no verb equivalent in French that equates to filling a prescription like we'd say in English. In France, you just pop into the pharmacy with your prescription, often printed or handwritten on a piece of paper you physically hand to your pharmacist or the pharmacy tech, and then in just a few seconds or a minute max, they'll return with your box of medication. Now, the exception here would be if you need a special preparation that they have to make at a compounding pharmacy or send it out, or in the rare case they're sold out of your medication. But in most cases, everyday prescription meds, antibiotics, other treatments, they're ready to go and they're on hand. So they'll ask for your social security card here if you're a resident in France to process that reimbursement. They'll explain how medication works, just like the US, and see if you have any questions and you'll be on your way. But I want to explain there's no wait time to get your medication. They're not going to tell you, okay, thanks for the prescription, drop it off, come back in 2 hours. Because in France, you get the entire box of medication, even if it contains more pills than your treatment requires. And your name, your address, and other personal details are not typed up on a little label like they would be for American prescriptions. Insurance and healthcare works differently here. And a cute little thing, French pharmacists, they still write the instructions right on the box, and I'll pop a picture of that up right here. Okay, next, French pharmacies' business hours are very different than what you might be used to. For example, most of my neighborhood pharmacies here open around 9 a.m. and then they close around lunchtime. Then after lunch, they'll reopen at 2 or 2:30 and they'll stay open till 6, maybe 7. Now, this is not the case everywhere in France for every pharmacy. Some do stay open a little bit later, especially if they're in big cities or they're just bigger pharmacies in general. French pharmacies are definitely not open 24 hours across the board, although there is an on-call pharmacy, and that's called a pharmacie de garde. It's in each town or commune if it's a small area, and they do stay open to be on call 24 hours for emergencies. They rotate. It's not always the same pharmacy. But a pharmacy that consistently has late night hours or a 24-hour pharmacy, aside from the one that's on call in smaller towns, would be super rare, or maybe I'd even say non-existent, but don't quote me on that. Okay, number four, there are no pharmacy chains in France. So you're not going to find the French equivalent of CVS or Boots or Duane Reade. You just don't find that here, and that's because French pharmacies are all privately owned. There might be a few exceptions to that, but nowhere on the scale of pharmacy chains in the US. So French pharmacies are pharmacies first and foremost, not drugstores where you can pick up, as I said, like magazines, gum, Gatorade, kids' toys, chips, and all the other drugstore items you'd commonly find at a CVS back in New York. No. So you can find the pharmacy. They all have flashy green pharmacy signs out front that easily identifies them as a pharmacy, not a marijuana dispensary, and that's going to be the same everywhere. So look for that flashy sign. All right, and now a quick word from my sponsor. Today's video is sponsored by Skillshare, an online learning community that offers thousands of inspiring classes on all kinds of creative topics ranging from photography and illustration to graphic design to fine art to music and cooking. And and so much more. I've been a fan of the platform personally for years, and I love that you can learn from the comfort and privacy of your own home. I'm currently taking YouTube Success Script, Shoot, and Edit with MKBHD Marques Brownlee's course, and one of the biggest takeaways he gives us so far is that he reminds us as creators to make something that we ourselves want to watch first and foremost. And then after that, I have a very tasty class from pastry chef Shubhranshu Bondo queued up titled French Pastry Fundamentals, Souffle, Tarts, and Chocolate Mousse Cake. So if there's a topic you're curious about, get this, the first 1,000 of my subscribers to click the link below in the description box will get a 1-month free trial to Skillshare, so you can start exploring your creativity today. But please don't wait, it is a limited time offer, and whether you've been a lifelong learner, you're a beginner, or a pro, Skillshare has video lessons that fit your schedule and your interests. And most classes, a great thing is that they're under 60 minutes if you're short on time. They're all also curated specifically for learning, meaning there are no ads. And Skillshare is always launching new premium classes, so you can follow wherever your creativity takes you. All right, now back to the video. All right, number 5, drugs are affordable. My pharmacist loves me because I'm always happy to pay for my medicine if something isn't completely reimbursed. And in most cases, that doesn't even come into play because medicines are reimbursed, or at least 50 to 90% less than the cost of the same thing in the US, even without French insurance or a French drug card. So prescription medication prices in France are regulated by the government, so they're the same price at every pharmacy. But for over-the-counter stuff like Advil or Maalox, each pharmacist can set his or her own price within reason. To give you an example, and I'm laughing because the price is just so different, drops for pink eye tend to be pretty expensive and will cost easily $100 in the US for a little tube, and that exact same thing in France cost me the equivalent of $15, and then I'm reimbursed 70% of that, plus a little more from my supplementary insurance called a mutuelle. But it definitely depends on the drug. Another example is I bought my best friend's son an EpiPen for his life-threatening allergy. It was 78 euros without insurance here in France for a box of 2. I delivered it to her when we visited, and she would have paid over $500 back in the US for the same thing. So just know medicine is a lot more affordable in France. Next, number 6, pharmacy employees are all trained in pharmacology to some extent, and this is a big one. In France, everyone who works at a pharmacy is trained, okay? And the minimum is a préparateur en pharmacie. There's no employee that's just hired as a cashier. And in the US, this is just important to mention, sometimes you'll pick up a prescription from the pharmacy window at, your CVS, and the person who helps you is a cashier. They're not trained in pharmacology. They don't really know anything about the specific medication, so you will have to wait for the pharmacist if you have a medicine-specific question. So the cashier will often work in different departments of the US drugstore. So one day maybe you're in the photo section, the next time you're back by the makeup, and then you're working the register at the pharmacy. So in France, that's not the case. French pharmacies are also amazing for getting practical advice on how to care for a major burn or a cut or some kind of sprain and that sort of thing. And employees are all trained to help with this, and they're in the practice of providing this service and suggesting a treatment or an over-the-counter medication or whatever ails you in a more community-focused way than I've seen in the US. So just to be clear, you can definitely get advice for these minor ailments from your American pharmacist. Both countries have highly trained pharmacists that do amazing work, but in practice, I found that culturally in France, the French are much more accustomed to approaching their pharmacists on a regular basis for practical advice, like I said, for minor injuries and ailments, more so than we would be in the US. Also, something to note is in many cases, over-the-counter medicines are usually behind the counter, so you can totally forget about discreetly grabbing your Imodium AD, is it AD? I don't even know. Your Imodium medicine for diarrhea and then heading discreetly to the self-checkout like you would in a grocery store. Over-the-counter medicines like Advil and all of that, they're only available at the pharmacy, not the supermarket. So in most cases, you have to discreetly talk to someone to get your medicine, and they'll be like, what's wrong with you? Oh, I have diarrhea. Okay, here you go. And hope no one's behind you who hears it. But like I said, it's not necessarily a bad thing to have to speak to someone about what ails you. You can get the best treatment that way. It's part of the culture. French people and French pharmacists are used to it, but it can be a little unnerving as a foreigner saying, yeah, I have diarrhea, in your big French accent with a huge line behind you. And in case it's of interest, I did a really fun behind the scenes video tour of a French pharmacy Pharmacy, where we see their robot technology, where I compare to drug prices. We learn about homeopathic treatments and more. I'll link it here. I would love it if you check that out. A lot of time and effort went into it. And I just want to thank you for watching. If you could take 2 seconds to hit like on this video, I'd really appreciate that. So go ahead and do it right here. Hit like. Did you do it? Thank you. And I'd love to hear what you love about French pharmacies or don't love down below in the comments. So talk to me. And as always, a big merci to my sponsors today at Skillshare. Thank you for sponsoring this video. And if you're not aware, collaborations like this help keep content free for you, the viewer. So thank you for your support. And as always, thanks for being here. And I'll see you back here on We in France soon. Salut!